end gapper showed up. First thoughts on this is the instructions are absolutely garbage. They don't really show anything. They kind of tell you something, but most of it's figure it out yourself. If these rings were ever any smaller, I would have to pull that little eccentric cam out of there. That's basically so you could set up the ring the same time every time. What I did is, I don't know if you could see, this kind of stops moving when it hits the stop. So I zeroed out the dial indicator. This is almost useless, but what it does do is it allows me to ballpark the ring into size. So loosen up this little jabber-do here, and then I slid the ring out a little bit. And then tighten it down. Now, I had done a couple rings, and I got a ballpark figure of where I needed to be to start my grinding. That's too far. I've determined I start my grinding at 30 thousandths. And then I come back, I'll take the ring to the block, put it in a bore, size it, and then bring it back and dial it in. Now the way I dial it in is by eyeball. So let's say I got it at 10 thousandths and I want it to be at 15. I will eyeball that gap right there and then grind it off. At first I was using a feeler gauge to put in there. It was just too much work. As for getting these dialed into 15 exactly, you can forget that. It does say, I did the math, and it was just an RCH under 15 thou for the ring gap using the measurement guide here. The first ring I did, I overshot. It's at about a 20 thousandths gap. Now, this being a 5-to-1 compression ratio engine, and this is not a race engine, I think I'm okay with 20 thousandths. I'm going to shoot for 15 to 20 with all the rings after that. But this is how I'm dialing it in. I'll get some footage of it in action. So am I impressed with this? No. I have to have it plugged in because the battery will not do a full set of rings on a charge. So I don't even know why they advertise it as wireless, or not wireless, but battery operated, because you need it plugged into work. I charged it all last night. It's just going to make short work of doing these rings versus doing it by hand. So I guess I'm happy with that. And kind of looks pretty. Pretty isn't always good though. And here we go. The rings have dots up, dot side up. Got this zeroed out so the travel is at the grinding wheel. I'm going to slip this baby in here, and like I said, trial and error, I learned that to start at about 30,000 on the dial indicator. Doesn't have to be exact. I don't want to go more than that. So I'm holding the ring against the grinding wheel and moving the base, and then I'll tighten that up. There's a supposedly 30,000 gap there. So I'll pull this away, turn it on, and let this come in. Take it to 0, shut it off, and then I'm going to go over and try sizing it in the bore. Let me, there's a couple little burrs. You just flick right off with hand. Before I go to put this together for good, I'll stone this. The burrs were right in here. Okay, let's go over to the block and I'll show you how I size it in the block. And take the ring dot side up, pop her in here, and then I'm going to use the piston and push it down about an inch. I don't know if you can see or not, but there's a slight gap right here. This is my 15 thousandths feeler gauge, and it is still tight. It's not going in. It appears, just by visually looking at it, there's maybe 8 thousandths gap. So I'm going to go back over and I'm going to touch that up with the wheel visually, like I showed in the first video how I did that. Let's see if we can get this dialed in. Okay, I've went back and forth about 3 times. That machine is really touchy. It's hard to judge what a thousandths is. Now, what I did learn is if you just try to manually push that in there and check the gap's going to end up bigger. You do need to put the piston in to help center it. Now, let's see, I got an 18 thousandths feeler gauge on now, and it does not go in all the way. Let me go to the 15, which is the spec, and I should be all right. Like I said, it said minimum. I'm pretty sure if I keep it between 15 and 20, I'll be all right. I'm not worried about crazy blow by. There we go. 15 went in just fine. Just gotta stone that and I'll be good with that one. I'll get back with you when I get all these rings done. Hey, what I got going on here is the ring needs to spin in this groove. There's about 1.5 thou clearance. So what I want to do is I want to make sure there's no burrs left over from the gapping project. So I'm just hitting all 4 corners with the stone lightly. If there are any burrs, they'll come right off. That way I got 2 things going on. I'm not going to scrape the cylinder bore, and I'm not going to stop the ring from moving in the piston. It will. I don't care what anybody says. Back in the real old days, they used to put pins in the pistons to stop these from moving. I was determined that was a waste of time. But I also did find a spec sheet showing between 3 and 3.5 inch bore. Let's see, where's it at? Yeah, about a 10 to 20 clearance for a ring end groove or end gap. I know I'm right in there. I'm in between 15 and 20, so I'm pretty good there. I don't think that's exactly so critical since they're giving you that wide of a clearance margin to go, but I'm gonna fall pretty much right in the middle of that. I'll do my measurements before I assemble it, know for sure. Okay, well, I got a few more minutes of doing this. Oh, and I did find out that the ring scraper, or the oil scraper rings, the gap's already preset. I don't have to grind that. Yay! Okay, time to assemble. Pistons are clean. I always start at the bottom. To me, it doesn't matter whether the gap edge is pointing up or down. I really don't care. The thing is, you've got to make sure Actually, let me pull this out of here. I don't know if you can see, but there's little rises in the back that the oil scraper ring needs to sit on. It can't be pinched in there. You'll see what I'm talking about. So I start in, usually put the gap at where the pin comes out here, and then I'm going to take the gap for the scraper ring and put it over here. I'll do a stagger, like one over here, one over there. I guess, I don't know if it matters or not, but in my mind it does. So I don't use tools for this. My hands are hard enough, so I started it in the bottom right there, and I'm just going to wrap it right around, lift it up so it doesn't scrape the piston, and that one is done. Now, it should move in and out a little. It does. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, so the scraper ring is in. Like I said, they should move. You should be able to squeeze them in and out, which is not a problem. Now, what I did when I sized these rings is I took the end gaps that were the largest and I'm putting them in the smallest holes. Typically, there's a dot for up on these rings. If not, the rule of thumb usually is, I don't know if you can see or not, there's a chamfer leading this way. Second ring chamfer faces down, top ring chamfer faces up. So I'm recording my sizes as I write it down. And like I said, make sure I got it in there correctly. Like I said, there's a tool for this, but I don't use the tool because my fingers are pretty hard as it is. I make sure that they turn freely in there. I don't know if you can see it, but there's the dot. I'm not really worried about gap location right now because these pistons are going to be handled when I go to put them on the rods. I'll set that up before I put them in the bore. So side clearance, I got a 1.5 feeler gauge, put it in there, and I can move it around. So I know the side clearance is good there. Like I said, Diamond Piston does a great job making these pistons. They're right in spec. So these are 1.5, and the bottom one, the oil scrapers, are 5,000s. Always make sure everything turns freely. Like I said, I like to squeeze it, make sure it goes in and out freely. That piston is ready to be put back in the box. When I get them all done, then I'll start putting them on the rods. This is where we're at. All my sizes are recorded. The brochure that came with the piston rings talks about crosshatch. Remember in videos of the past where the talks about crosshatch, not linear lines like that wonderful machine shop gave me. It also calls out what grit stone to use. And it is calling out 220 to 280. I have these things honed in at 180, so I've ordered a 280 grit stone, and all I'm going to do is just kiss it lightly, and it'll get rid of that line, and it'll cross hatch it the way I need it to be with the grit I need it to be. I'm not even going to take off 1/10 of a thousandth, so it's just going to be a slight cleanup flip the block over, blow it all out, clean it out, and then put the crank in. So I'm getting close to having a short block. I think that's reason to celebrate. What do I want today? That sounds good.